Today, we're going to rate books that I read in January and February of 2023. So most of the time, when I'm doing video reviews of books, I don't provide a star rating because star ratings don't really have a guideline of the way that you're supposed to implement them. So a 4-star book sounds good to some people, and to some people it's like, well, why isn't it 5 stars? There must be something wrong with it. So rather than have to go into the way that I rate books and the reason that I rate them that way every single time, I just skip it and rate them on my own. But I thought maybe I'd share that process with you, and if it's something you like, we'll keep doing it. Before we get going, I do have to do the YouTube thing and say if you would please like and subscribe to the video, it would really help me out, and if you've already taken the time to do that, thank you very much. Okay, so this is the way that I rate books. If you disagree with it, you rate your books on your account the way you want, and I will rate books on my account the way that I want. So I know a lot of people are basically have the opinion that anything less than 5 stars is knocking the author or knocking the book, and that's not the case for me. Okay, so here's how I rate books. If it is a 1 star, I hated it. I generally actively recommend against people reading it or buying it, and I've probably already donated my copy. If it is 2 stars, I disliked it, but I don't want to set it on fire. 3 stars means it's just kind of meh. It's mediocre, it's typical of its genre, I didn't love or hate it, it was just kind of, okay, I've read it, now what? 4 stars means I like it, but it wasn't perfect. Either there were glaring issues that sort of detracted from my enjoyment somewhat, or it just didn't grip me the way that I feel like a book should. 5 stars means I loved it, I am actively recommending the book to others, I may have bought extra copies for friends or family, and it's probably going in my potentially to read again pile or shelf or whatever. By the way, if you want to follow me on Goodreads, you can do that here. I'll also put that link in the description down below for your ease. I don't know what benefit people get to following people on Goodreads. I don't really use Goodreads as far as like book recs go, but I'm aware that some people use it as a book recommendation tool, or that's where they get their book recommendations from. So if you're interested in what I think about books and you don't want to sit and watch my library of book reviews, you're welcome to follow me over there. I should probably also mention that all of these books that I am talking about today, I have done full book reviews for, so I'll make sure that I link all of those down in the description. One of the first books I read in 2023 was Alliandre Rising, and I actually started reading it over Christmas and then finished it after the new year. It is an epic fantasy with sort of medium stakes, at least in that book, with allusions to potentially bigger stakes. And there are certainly some parts about Alliandre Rising that I really liked. A lot of the world building was pretty cool and really well thought out, especially the cultural stuff in the world building was really neat. I also quite liked the RPG-esque inspired or RPG feel of it when it was working. It wasn't always, and when it wasn't working, it was really, really not working. Some of the issues with the book are that the characters are overpowered. There's never really any risk of them losing. At one point, a guy beats 20 people at one time with a sword, and he does this over and over again. He never really seems to get tired. Like, it mentions that he's tired, but it doesn't impact his performance, so why mention that he's tired? Another problem was that the author tended to get bogged down in details. So repeated, very detailed description of character clothing, much the way that a RPG player would describe their own character, their own OC. Repeated, very detailed descriptions of what everyone's ordering at the tavern and the way that the food looks and who's eating what, and there wasn't enough sensory detail to sort of get you invested. There wasn't a lot of like sight and sound and smell. It was just like, I'd like bacon and a pile of eggs and half a ham and a chicken, and they just do this over and over. The fight scenes also were entirely too detailed and also somehow not detailed enough. So they would describe each blow within the fight, but use names that you didn't know. So it was like, Alliandre performs Mantis Strike, and Darius performs, Thunder Kick, and it's like, okay, that's great, but I don't know what those are. And oh, by the way, I don't need to know what everybody's doing with their hands and feet all the time. Just kind of give me the highlights. Anyway, so I found that there were big portions of the book that I just sort of skimmed through because they were really repetitive and way too over-detailed. Anyway, if that's your thing and you really like that sort of DM describing the world to you in fine detail, it might be something you really enjoy. It did not work for me. I also really hated the ending. None of the open story threads got resolved, barring one that wasn't that important. And it just sort of felt like the author ran out of what to do next and just kind of stopped in the middle of a scene. He finished the sentence, but there's no conclusion. There's no tentative resolution to any of the things. There's no even like, okay, we've come to a reasonable stopping point. He opened all of these huge sweeping story threads, all of these huge dynamic story threads, and then he just didn't do anything with them. They just hang there. And I have a feeling he's meaning to carry them on in future books, but you need to bring them to some sort of rounded, or at least like a down dip, carry them on through and then like bring like a temporary solution or like put a pin in it or something. Don't just leave things hanging like that. So I didn't hate the book, but there were a lot of things I didn't like. And to me, it is below average for an epic fantasy of its kind. So for me, Alliandre Rising is a 2-star read. Another book that I started in December and then carried on reading into January was The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Mason. Or Mark Manson, I can't remember. Anyway, it's bright orange. I had a lot of arguments with this book while I was reading it, and by the time I got to the end, I finally realized I was just not the right audience for that book. Because I didn't choose the book for myself, it was given to me by somebody else who was also reading it and basically bought 8 copies and just handed them out to people. And because I genuinely feel I am not the right audience for this book, I don't think it's fair for me to rate it, because I don't want to influence the way other people feel about it when I can just tell that I wasn't the target audience for it. So I'm actually going to skip the star rating on this one because I don't feel like it's fair to rate a book if I'm not the right person to be reading it. After Alliandre Rising, I read Dead Skin Mask, and if you've watched my video review of that, you already know I really hated this book. Like, waving it at the camera like a mad woman ranting and raving, kind of hated this book. So there's no way that I'm going to rate it higher than a 1 star. However, I'd also like to note that I really like the way that this author writes. I like the way they use prose. I like the concepts that they explore within their writing. And I did really enjoy another of his books called All Hail the Carrion King. So I don't think that the author is bad at his craft. I think that this story and this character just didn't work. Next, I read The Delicate Art of Death by Ryan McGinnis, and I kind of devoured this in a single afternoon and forgot to take notes and then had to do everything from memory, so it definitely got me engaged. It is a crime/suspense drama with a disgraced FBI agent sort of trying to root out the killer in a small town in Kansas. So if you're into that sort of thing, I found that the lead character was very engaging and felt very realistic to me. It is not the best crime suspense drama I've ever read, but I did really enjoy it, so that one's going to be 4 stars for me. After The Delicate Art of Death, I did a buddy read of No Longer Human with Ian Kirkpatrick, and then we did sort of a mutual live stream. We streamed together. This is not a book I would have chosen for myself. I tend to read more uplifting sort of things, and this is not that. It is an exquisite exploration of human loneliness, and I know that that sounds awful, but it was so good. It's one of those books that really sticks with you and really speaks to you and makes your brain work. Not in a, it was difficult to read, but in a, you have all of the feelings and therefore all of the thoughts. And because of that, it's hard to say that you enjoyed something like this, but I got a lot out of it. So that one's going to be a 5 star for me. The last book I read in February was The Wolf and the Hawk by Julian Greystoke, and this one was right up my alley. It is a slow burn fantasy romance with medium to medium high stakes. I would say probably closer to high. The whole realm is at stake. Yeah, I loved the characters. I found them engaging. I found their friendships to be really interesting and fun. And the way that the romance was slowly woven together over time, where they really had to work for it and really had to make allowances for each other and make themselves vulnerable in order to progress. I just thought it was really well done. I also really jived with the heroine, not because I am a strong warrior woman, but I found her to be very grounded and very careful and thoughtful and genuinely trying to make a good go of it, genuinely trying to do the right thing. There was none of the sort of shallow high school drama that you find in a lot of fantasy romance books. There was none of the nonsense of, well, all of this could be solved if they would just talk to each other. Like, they do talk to each other, they just don't communicate very well. But they're trying, and it's really well done, in my opinion, and I really enjoyed it, so this one's a 5-star for me. So that's it. That's the books I read in January and February of this year, and I plan to do this again in a few months when I've racked up a few more. If you want to add to my TBR, or you just get frisky and decide you want to buy me a book, all of that information is down in the description. I do actively talk about the books I'm reading, both on Twitter and on Discord, and you're welcome to follow me on any of my varied social medias. As it is, thanks so much for watching. Have an excellent day, and I'll see you next Tuesday. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and of course, if you like the way that I present information, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell down below. You can find all of my social media contacts in the description, and of course, if you want to keep up with me and the progress I'm making on my current novel, you can do that at effywritesbooks.com. Thank you so much for watching, have an excellent day, and I'll see you next time.